Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Six yet, Gary.
According to my clock, it is.
Really? Okay, my watch
That's
is
all.
off. I apologize. It's 5:59. See, I told you.
Crucify me for 30 seconds. Would you all
Go ahead,
rise and
start the
pledge
meeting.
allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Hicks, for being the clock watcher.
Probably the only thing I'll do tonight is going to be received positively, or semi-positively.
Okay, first item, vote to approve the executive session and business meetings of July 9th and workshop meeting of July 16th.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Communications. I'd like to take a minute to congratulate Deb Kirk, children librarian, on her retirement after 14 years of service to the community. I know she volunteered there. It's tough when you lose somebody with a lot of years in this town, as we know. So kudos to her.
Thank you for her service. My kids remember her fondly, so, and they're in college now, so,
You're getting older.
yeah.
Okay, citizens input. First opportunity, would like to start with you, Steve.
My name is Stephen Hassey. I'm the owner of 61 Wall Street, a 4-unit residential building on the corner of Wall and Mechanic Street. I am honored to address you this evening. I want to begin by thanking Tom Gregory, our town administrator, for providing me with the traffic study that was done in the Wall Street neighborhood. I have read it in its entirety and found it to be very informative. I hope that you all have had a chance to read my packet of information that I sent out to you on the 26th of July. I thank the 5 of you for your service to our community. Wendy, Gary, Tony, Ralph, and Warren. If you were a price shopper and you saw me drop a $50 bill on the floor, I'm 100% certain that each and every one of you would pick it up and return to me in an act of kindness. Well, Mike and I, who are sitting next to me, are not losing $50, not $100, not $1,000, but tens of thousands of dollars by this no parking decision. When that vote was taken back in June 18th, none of the information that I provided to you was available at that time. Just as you would return my $50 bill in an act of kindness, I ask you that in that same spirit of kindness, you vote to reconsider your no parking decision. I will be forever grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your input on that.
Make a motion that we bring it up at another meeting.
Seconded.
So through the administrator, if you would put that on the next agenda, and we'll discuss it at that point. So that's where it will be at our next meeting. I'll make sure that it's posted on our website, but we'll make sure you know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else?
Gary, that next meeting that's next.
August,
is
next
enough
Monday,
time?
August
Monday.
20th.
Enough time for that?
It's a work, you
Yeah,
want to work
48
next
hours
Monday.
notice.
You want it at a work
Yes.
session?
I was gonna put it the next meeting, but if they wanna go to the workshop, we can.
Is there any limitations by doing that?
I don't think so. We can do that at a workshop, correct? Because our next one is a workshop.
Yes,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Mr. Norquist.
Yeah, Kurt
Name and address.
Norquist, Gale Drive, Spencer. I seen the paper and I saw the Beamises putting up the flowers. I just want to say congratulations to the Beamises and the people who donated money. It makes the town look a lot more better. I know Mr. Pepe's talking about downtown beautification. This is a good step in that direction. The second thing I'd like to talk about, I talked to the town administrator on Wednesday about a same matter but different question, is how about the railings on Mechanic Street? That was supposed to be in there, and the railings in front of Brenda's next door. When the state gives it up and we take it over, we're gonna be responsible. So why wouldn't you make the state or who's ever contractor who was involved with this to put the railings up so it'd be safety for the handicapped cross onto Mechanic Street and the hairdresser next door? If, you should be on them and make sure I get that done. Thank you.
Your ears must have been burning there.
Mr. Chairman, I thought they were ordered as part of the punch list. Mr. Gregory can confirm that perhaps.
That's my understanding, so
So they are
I'll,
coming, Kurt.
Okay, thank you.
They're ordered, the first ones came in, there was something wrong with them, just so everybody knows. We haven't signed off on that road, nor will we until it's complete, so, and they are on it. I know, Tom, you're working with Evan, I
Right.
believe, on this now, so thank you for bringing that up, so.
Yeah, we talked about it tonight, Kurt, so we know it's an issue.
Thank you.
Your ears were probably ringing before we get down.
I just want to know if you're taking comments on the Wall Street thing or is that the next meeting?
On which one?
You can come up now, sir.
You get up to speak?
Okay, my name is Al Rich, I live on Cherry Street in Spencer. I have kind of a unique perspective on this thing because I both live on Wall Street and I also hit the roof. Okay? And, my issue with it is, again, me living, if I was living on Wall Street, it would be a heck of a thing for me at my age, 70 years old, to have to park 100 feet away, bring the groceries, especially in the winter time. If you really think about it, it's not a good thing to do to the residents. The issue with the roof is quite simply, I was pulling out of the driveway, taking a right with a truck when I moved in July of '08. And I hit the roof because I couldn't see the roof. I had no idea there was a roof there. You know, when you go to the Spencer Bank, they have yellow posts that says, you know, don't get too close, you're gonna hit the bank wall. They have that in a lot of places. To me, a simple solution would be, and a lot of them, so this may be a dumb one, but, you know, a post on the corner. If there was a post on the corner, there's no way I would have hit that roof, because I would have had to pull out into the street far enough to go around the post. Okay, so a post in the corner, each corner, maybe a couple in the middle, because I know they have to plow, you know, to make it easier for the owner, which to me would solve that problem and go a long way towards solving it, and it would not, most importantly, penalize people, the 4 families who are living there. Because if you just think about it, you know, I can't tell you, you can't park in your driveway anymore. You can't park in your house anymore. It sounds like a nice fix to make it a no parking street. I don't see it fixing the problem, because even if there were no cars, which I can remember 10 years ago, I still would have hit the roof because I couldn't see the roof. I had no idea, because the roof sticks out quite a bit. I'm sure it's a design building, it's a depot, and the trains come by, and George Washington didn't have to worry about it, so that was all good. But to me, that roof is still gonna get hit if there's 0 cars on that road. I know that because I hit the roof. So I just wanted to mention that to the select board, to take into consideration when we discuss this.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
If you want me to go over there, I will. I walked around there this afternoon, and got a bird's eye view of things. I know you've gone down there too, Mr. Chairman. And I do have some thoughts that I really can't get into tonight because it is not on the agenda.
Well, that's fine.
But I do think it's worth revisiting, and perhaps some changes to our decision can be made. I'm not gonna promise anything, because it's, I'm not saying even I would vote for it, but I think it's certainly worth considering and looking at and giving it another discussion. And we'll be meeting again next week. Mr. Chairman, do you know, or does Mr. Gregory know, or does Brenda know? Can we get this room next week in case these folks want to return?
Yes.
That'd be, because usually we meet in the room in back of you, which holds about 10, 12 people comfortably. So this is good, we'll be in here, that's great, okay.
So I appreciate you hearing me again. I
Thank
hit the
you.
roof, so I get a pretty good view of what not to do in the future. It's a little too late for that.
Now we know who
Your
did
time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night now.
thank you.
Anybody else?
We got a guy in the
Al
back
first.
and then him.
Al's been waving.
This guy over here, I don't know who he is. Sheriff.
Now, that June Meadow Road, Spencer.
Good evening, Al.
Hi, Al.
I want to talk about a word that's been thrown around here, and not just this meeting, it's responsibility, responsible. I made 3 calls 2 weeks ago, once to the superintendent of schools, and left a message for Missy, somebody was on the recorder, never got a call back.
Missy Farrell.
2 members of the Parks and Rec, Mr. Shemeth and Churchy, Mr. Churchy. 2 weeks later to the day, Mr. Churchy called me back. But let's start with the responsible. Over at Wire Village School, where the basketball court is, there were some trash bins. They took them out. For what reason? The kids play ball. So some responsible kids hung trash bag on the fence to throw their bottles in, so they're not throwing them all over. That's a responsible kid. You know, why can't they leave one trash barrel? They took the toilet, I can see the porta potty, it's paid by somebody else. But those kids are responsible. They don't want to throw their trash around, so they hung a bag up. Why can't you leave one trash bin there for them? And the other thing is, dogs. We don't need a dog park. I hear it's been voted down anyways, but we have one at Wire Village School. You know, people walk there and they tell me, and my wife's one of them, they come, let their dogs run loose, and they crap all, it says no dogs on the field. They're on the field. Another sign says no dogs beyond this point. And they're not on leashes. They let them run. One guy hits golf balls. And these are the same responsible dog owners that they said were going to police the dog park. It's not going to happen. So I'm glad it was voted down for that reason. I know somebody that mows that field, and he said it's full of dog crap. So what happened to the responsible dog owners they talked about all the time they were having these meetings? That's all I have to say. We don't need dog parks because we got one and it's called Wire Village School. And I appreciate people calling me back when I leave messages for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Al.
Good evening, gentlemen. Bill Shemeth, 6 Dale Street. The dog park's a dead issue. The commission voted, and that's not moving forward for all the reasons that Al spoke to, as well as others. The concert series actually didn't end this past Sunday. We postponed one of the concerts due to weather, so I wanted to let the public know that the Louis Armstrong Dixieland Stomp concert will be this Sunday at 6 p.m. at the Powder Mill Park. And we certainly invite everyone to come and attend. We've had excellent attendance, best attendance we've had in any series so far. I think it's an idea that's finally caught on, and the public, even having to hold it upstairs last night, people saw the sign down at Powder Mill Park or in front of the town hall and came here and attended, and we had a good 25 people. So it's definitely, we're with the other communities now, and we'll be looking on how to better support and expand those opportunities going forward. So perhaps we can have concerts not only at Powder Mill, but a couple at Luther Hill or at O'Gara, once we have the facilities in place to support those. On looking at what you're going to be discussing on your agenda, I know the new superintendent of schools will be speaking shortly. I'm very pleased to have read in the newspaper that East Brookfield has finally decided that they're going to stay with the region and not look to leave, in which case my first request to the board and the administrator is that through all, I've been appointed as the citizen representative by the school committee for Spencer for the looking at the regional school agreement. One of the major issues as far as how we move forward to improve the region is to improve the facilities at the high school. The biggest roadblock to that has been not knowing whether East Brookfield was going to be on board. Now that we know East Brookfield is going to be on board, Tom, I would ask that we look into whatever we need to do to make sure that the school building assistance program moves forward. I know the school committee has kept whatever we need to do to make sure we can go with that in place. And now would be the time, now that we know East Brookfield is going to stay with the region, that we move quickly to do whatever it takes to improve Prouty enough to attract, keep the students we have and get other students back or attract choice students from other districts, because we have some excellent programs and opportunities with the Innovation Lab and other things. And that's something now that may not have been on your agenda before as a front burner, but should be now. And again, I don't know if your board has had discussions about looking at the regional agreement and whatever you want to come forward with. I know the FinCom will be shortly. If you haven't, please put it on your workshop, have those discussions so that we can make sure those issues are addressed, because East Brookfield has been very diligent about indicating what their issues are. Spencer, you may have already done this, I don't know, but if you haven't, please do so, so that by the end of September, at least the Regional Agreement Committee knows where you are coming from. So if you haven't had those conversations, please schedule time to do so. And then the rail trail phase 2 has been completed. There are some rain washout issues by the O'Gara Park section that will kind of have to be revisited, but we'll be looking forward to move on phase 3, which we already have the grant in place, the match in place, and the grant money in place. And that will involve working with the school districts, both Bay Path and Spencer East Brookfield, to put the amenities, so benches, trash cans, signage. It's going to be a great opportunity for our students, whether they're Bay Path, Knox Trail, or Prati, to do some scientific or historical research to serve as the basis for various signs or throughout the rail trail. And it will be a great also opportunity eventually to expand environmental education opportunities in general. You'll be able to take a group of students on the rail trail, look at the habitat, have a class, and educate them. There are a couple of like cement type benches that were put on there, one by the couple by the pond. Those appear to be, I think, the most durable, correct model. The size of them may need to differ along the rail trail where you don't have as much space, but they look very aesthetically positive and they cannot be easily destroyed. So that's the model I think we need to look at, maybe in a different size going forward. And it's also an opportunity if there are businesses or community organizations that want to sponsor a bench, or anyone who wants to sponsor a bench or a sign or an amenity along the rail trail, we can recognize their support for that particular bench or sign or exercise station or whatever it may happen to be. If you walk along the rail trail up in Rutland, you'll see some of the benches where someone has donated a bench and then it's recognized right on the bench. So that's an opportunity not only there, but perhaps at some of our other parks, if you want to add benches to Powder Mill or tables or things down at Luther Hill, we can recognize that individual specific donation right on that particular thing they donated. I know the town administrator will be speaking about downtown blight. Hopefully that conversation also expands to not only the buildings that have X's on them that don't look good, that should be dealt with, but also how do we fill the spaces that are unleased at the moment. So across the street, what used to be the Cumberland Farms, you go to John's Pizza, 2 spaces on either side of John's Pizza are unrented. You see unrented space here and there on Mechanic Street, and then the building for sale further down on Main Street. I would urge you to have an economic development strategy to appropriately try and get those spaces filled with what you think is a good fit for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Anybody else at this time? You get a second bite at the apple down the road, but Paul, name and address up here, please.
My name is Paul Andrews from 51 Valley Street. I'd like to address the problem of the construction company that's doing the work on Chestnut Street. They fail to protect the properties coming down that hill on Chestnut Street from runoff from these major storms we've been having. On August 17th, I had debris like you wouldn't believe in my yard. They had to use a bucket to get it out. They did damage to the driveway, not only at the edge, but throughout the whole driveway. There's little holes where they rode over the rocks. I mean rocks that were 1.5 to 2 inches in size. And kind of wiped out all the flower beds, and I had a huge river coming right through my yard, right down to the shed. And the property next door had a river coming through their driveway, through their yard, and into my yard also. And then, in regards to not protecting the properties, on August 2nd, the same thing happened, but not as severe. And they had to use their equipment to come in and clean out my driveway again.
That they did. So, just so you know, Paul, is that, as you know, I was down there looking at it with you.
Right.
I've informed the town administrator, and I can tell you that Evan met with the contractor. I don't know what the solution is right now, but I know they are looking at it, and I think they even went to your property, so.
Yeah, I believe they've been down looking at it.
So I think that, the other thing I'm gonna say is that they tore off the sidewalk and never put a base coat down, that's why you had so much mud and flooding going. As you
Yeah.
see now, it's being,
Well, even tonight with this rainstorm here, I had a little trail of mud coming through my driveway. It's coming down the gutters where they left open. And there's cement in there now, but it's coming from the top of the hill. Anything that's at the top of the hill comes down the hill. And with these major rainstorms, and it's summertime, that's what you expect in the rainy season, you know?
so just so you know,
Okay.
Evan is working with the contractor on it, so as soon as, whatever the solution is, there will be something. I don't know what that is tonight, so I have to tell you, you know, they're looking at it.
Okay,
And you will be informed like you always ask.
okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there are conservation laws. There's supposed to be hay bales and other means of keeping the water from going down. I noticed they're starting on the sidewalk project down by the old Plants Auto Body on Main Street. I drove by today, you may have. And they've got hay there, rounded hay. I don't know what it's called. I'm not a contractor, I don't know the name of it, but it's like compressed, looks like compressed hay that's like a solid hose.
And a soft.
To keep the soil from running.
Right.
And I think this is what our contractor needs to do, is get some of that in there, some hay bales and redirect the water so that it goes where it's supposed to go, down the street, and down the drain, not into people's yards and driveways. So perhaps, Mr. Gregory, you can make sure that Evan realizes that. I'm sure he probably does, but I don't take anything for chance anymore. And make sure that they spend some money on some hay bales. It's not a lot of money, but it can make a big difference for people like Paul.
On August 2nd, right, that's when we had the last rainstorm. Okay? The next week, they filled the sidewalks in, graded all the sidewalks, right, and rolled them. Okay? And they put 3 sandbags at the edge of my driveway, right? And it stopped the water from coming in. And that's the only time they ever protected my property. But they protected their work around the catch basins, so they wouldn't damage the work they were doing.
So Mr. the Chair, it sounds like there's multiple properties being affected by this. Is Evan the only guy we should have
They
looking at
had,
this?
just so everybody knows, the engineer's been out, the engineer is working.
It's Stantec, they're the project manager.
Who is the engineer we hired to watch over it. There was a meeting with the contractor and the engineer to solve this problem. I don't have the answer tonight, and I don't think we can solve it here tonight, but I can tell you they are working on it. That I know for a fact, because I was down there again today. So there'll be an answer for you, Paul.
Okay.
And I know Evan's all over them right now.
And as far as conservation goes, they didn't protect the brook at all.
Yeah. And it definitely goes downhill to the little
Right.
river.
Everything goes down the brook.
So, and they're all over it, and the engineer is involved now.
Okay.
So,
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. We're sorry for your trouble.
put that on your list, Mr. Administrator.
He has.
Get your representative.
Anybody else? You're gonna get a second chance anyway, so. We'll move on to new business. Item A, action item, request for a license to hold a fair for Spencer Agricultural Association for the Spencer Fair from August 30th through September 3rd. This is a yearly event.
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the license for the Great Spencer Fair,
Have a
August
motion.
30th to September 3rd.
A a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Next item B, request from Spencer Agricultural Association for a one-way traffic pattern on Smithville Road and Smithville Crossroad for the Spencer Fair during Labor Day weekend at the Spencer Fairgrounds from September 2nd through September 5th.
Through the chair.
It's 2018, they have 16 on here, but
Yeah, so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Seconded.
no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Action item, application for a Sunday entertainment license for the Spencer Agricultural Association for the Spencer Fair on September 4th of 2018.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
I have a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Got some good entertainment coming this year, Bob?
Yes, we do.
Excellent,
Mark Will's Country and Western Star.
excellent.
And let's see, we have stingrays this year, and we're gonna have a wolf display.
Nice.
And
I
that's
saw the wolves. I thought that was you. They're gonna have, I saw it today when I was reading my packet. What are the wolves gonna do? Because I think it indicates there's gonna be
This is gonna be like a demonstration type action,
Yeah.
which what the Tigers did last year.
so the wolves will be running free?
Well, inside the cage.
Oh,
You got the magic act to make them disappear.
Right, yes, hopefully, if we need to. Yes,
And we all want to play chicken
And
bingo,
the
right?
tractor pulls it this year again.
yes, yep,
It looks like a couple of the country and western, right?
yes.
So,
well, that's great. You're gonna have the entertainment you're gonna have. I think it's a big draw.
Yes, it is.
I think last year's concert was superb. It was sad to hear that she's battling cancer,
Yes, she is.
but she did a great job, and I think it brought people to the fair that perhaps never would have even thought of coming to the fair that may come back again.
Yep.
So I think you're doing a good job, as far as I can tell.
We're trying to get some bigger acts, some bigger names to draw the
Yeah.
audience in. So it seems to
Years
work.
ago, they did, and then it stopped.
Yes.
And I'm dating myself. When we lived on Condon Drive, I saw Kitty Wells bus go by on 49. Most people don't even know who Kitty Wells is anymore, but
We'll Google that in a second.
she would be like the Martina McBride of the 50s.
Well, thank you to the board, and I hope to see you all at the fair.
We will.
Yeah, good luck to
You
you.
will.
Thanks, Bob.
thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item, introduction of our new superintendent. I did see him. In discussion on the MSBA meeting invitation for August 16th of 2018. Welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to just hand out a few things, if that's all right, with the board's indulgence. Thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Dr. Paul Hahi. I'm the superintendent of schools for the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. It's an honor and a privilege to be here before you this evening. Understanding that the primary reason for my visit is the MSBA site visit that is upcoming. The Mass School Building Authority would like to come out and conduct a site visit with our boards of selectmen, finance committee, and school committee membership to look at David Prati High School to determine level of need and where we fit on the specs. As of last week, there were 70 projects in the queue that had been requested, of which we are now one of 35 remaining. So the fact that we're in the site visit phase is a good thing. It gives us an opportunity for them to assess and see in real time what's been done versus the statement of interest and what will be hopefully planned moving forward within the scope of work that is proposed. So I do encourage each and every member of this Board of Selectmen to please attend on Thursday, August 16th at 9 a.m. so that we have a good representation from Spencer, East Brookfield, and Spencer itself, Spencer as well as East Brookfield, and represent a united front for our children here in our regional school district. Very excited to have them coming out. I've met with them personally earlier in July and had a number of conversations with them along the way since joining the district, and just see this as another step in the process that needs to take place for all the kids in the district. So again, that was the primary reason for me coming. The other is also to introduce myself. I'm literally day 41, 42. So I thought it
That'll
might be a
blur
good
after a
idea that
while.
what I do for one, my father raised me to believe if he did it for one child, he did it for the other. I had the opportunity to go to East Brookfield a couple weeks back, and I wanted the same opportunity to meet everyone here at the Board of Selectmen as well. Really kind of make some time. I'm working on my entry plan as a new superintendent, and usually that takes about 6 months to kind of do your entry plan work. So I also wanted to, on the agenda that I handed you, extend an invitation to meet with me so we can talk about the district, the community, and what we are looking to do moving forward, and how I can kind of help work to help not only you remain connected, but invested in the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. Some things that Mr. Gregory, the town administrator, and I met earlier on a couple weeks back and discussed were alternative revenue streams for the district, so that we were not putting any burden on the taxpayers moving forward, and that what was needed was really needed. But really kind of also looking at alternative revenue streams as a vehicle. I will be looking to hopefully invite the selectmen to meet with the school committee, as well as with East Brookfield, all of us together, regarding those opportunities. But where the properties for 3 out of the 4 buildings are in Spencer, it makes sense that I would look for the support of the Spencer Board of Selectmen with regard to such a project, whether it be solar panels, a wind turbine, cell phone towers, anything we can do to create alternative revenue streams to be a little more independent is just relieving any questions that taxpayers have in terms of fiduciary responsibilities. And that obviously would require an article and the like moving forward. But it's in a very initial stage, and I did mention it to Mr. Gregory and thought it was something of interest and of note for all of us this evening as well. That's pretty much it.
Well, welcome to town.
Thank you very
Very
much.
nice
Best
to
of
meet you.
luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Hopefully we can help you in any way we can.
Yep.
Yeah, through the chair, I've had a chance to meet with Dr. Hahi, and I think he's the right man for the right time. Don't let me down now. I really think he's got his act together. I think he's got the right mix of background, knowledge, training, and most importantly, I think he's got the personality for it. He's user-friendly, and we had a couple of people up there that weren't user-friendly, and I believe you are. And anything that certainly the board can do for you, we will. And anything I can do for you as a board member, or for that matter, as a citizen, I'm a phone call away, as I told you.
Yep.
When you get a building committee, I would be happy to serve if you wanted me to serve. I was chair of the Knox Trail Building Committee, served on the Wire Village School Building Committee. Both of those were 8-year commitments.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize when they get on a building committee that it can last an average about 8 years is the average. If you get done in 6 or 7, you've done a real good job. And then there are places like Auburn, it took, I think, almost a dozen years to get Auburn High School built. And then a couple of years later, they built the middle school. It was kind of like mind-boggling how they took so long on one and the other just snapped right along, So anything I can do, I wrote the original statement of interest for Prati and the revision. And we were moving ahead until we had a big bump in the road.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here, not just at our meeting, but I'm glad you're here in the Blue House. And God knows I wish you the very best.
I thank you very much. And again, I look forward to meeting with each and every one of you. I really would love to spend the same amount of time. So please feel free at your convenience to reach out. Missy is back from vacation tomorrow, so I will follow up on Al's phone call and find out what happened there. I know she's been away on vacation, but that's no excuse. I want to make sure I get all the information out to the constituents in a timely manner. And again, welcome the opportunity to sit with you and meet with you and work with you moving forward.
We appreciate it.
So thank you for the time, and
Thank you.
if there's nothing else, thank you very much, Mr. Gregory, for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, appreciate it very, very much.
Good evening. Drive
everyone.
safe.
Take care.
Yes, you too.
Forward movement, right? Okay. Review and act on utility and facilities superintendent appointment, Mr. Administrator.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to draw reference to my memo to the board dated August 13th that summarizes where we've been and where we are currently with the utilities and facilities vacancy that was created earlier in the year. We advertised the position back in April, I think it was, and the town ultimately received 5 resumes for this position. And the screening committee ended up interviewing 2 candidates of the 5 who were deemed worthy of or qualified of an interview. Bill Krakowski was one of the 2. He was invited back for a second interview, and then at the conclusion of the interview, the committee unanimously recommended his hiring. So I performed a Corey check and other checks. Background checks were all satisfactory, and I conducted negotiations relative to salary and benefits. As it's detailed in the memo, and I'd like to ask the board's ratification of this appointment this evening. I think Mr. Krakowski will do a fine job for the town. He's been with the Metropolitan District as a project engineer. They're the water and sewer district around Greater Hartford. He's been there for some time. He's a professional engineer. I think he'll be able to step in and do a very good job for the town and pick up where Mr. Tyler left off. And that's where we are. He would need, as far as notice, he would need to give 30 days notice to his current employer. So if the board so voted tonight to ratify the appointment, Mr. Krakowski could give notice tomorrow and be employed with the town by September 17th. So that's where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the applicant or about the process.
We learned, through Chair, through the hard way, the requirements of that position and the skill set behind it, and we found that having an engineering degree was critical.
Right.
And so this gentleman fits all those, and he's aware of all the projects we have going. He knows what he's getting into.
Right.
So,
Full disclosure.
yeah, if the committee felt comfortable, then I feel comfortable moving forward.
Just want to second what Tony said.
And I will say this, because I sat through those interviews, and Bill brings a lot to the table. He's energetic. He is very fired up to start. And the second interview was brought back, so we just wanted to verify and instill on him how much work this job really is, and what he was getting into. He didn't run out of the room.
That's a good sign.
That's what we thought. And I will say, he's nothing but a gentleman. We talked about, responding to any of the citizens' problems. As we know, as we heard tonight, you always have issues pop up, and to follow through on that. We did give him some scenarios, and I'm very pleased with the way he handled it. Very professional. And I think that's what he's bringing. He's bringing the professional atmosphere that we already have in place. That's going to be a continuation of what we're losing. So that's just my feeling of what we went through. I don't know if you have anything to add.
Just one more thing, Mr. Chairman, to add. He will likely shadow Mr. Tyler for a period of time, sort of to be determined and worked out as he comes on board, perhaps a month. Yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking.
Which is what
perhaps
we asked for in that meeting.
Right. So I just want to draw attention to that and have the board be mindful that salary line may need an adjustment before the end of the year, because he'll be paying Steve through that as in his capacity as a consultant, and Mr. Krakowski for a period of time. So,
which Steve has been 2 days a week or
I
something.
think it's about 2 days a week, yeah.
So even though the line item may have to be changed, we're not looking at astronomical numbers, but I think the combination of Steve walking him through what pile is on his desk is gonna definitely be a benefit and keep things moving, so.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to move forward on the offer and employment discussions for the administrator for the utilities and facilities superintendent position.
Seconded.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carry on, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a joint meeting with the Building and Property Reuse Advisory Committee to discuss the RFP for Lake Street. So Paul, if you guys want to come up.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank these people for giving the time that they've been giving. It's been a daunting task, I know, so thank you for all that you have done and continue to do.
So what we have is both folks with us tonight, which is MHPI, which operates David Prati, and, yep, I'm sorry, because you're out of Connecticut, right?
No, we're out of Massachusetts
Oh, out
as
of
well. The Women's Institute for
Okay.
Housing and Economic Development.
Okay, I have it here. So,
We do have a PowerPoint, but in
and we have you set up.
We can just go through, I don't know if it offer it.
You just go ahead, just present.
Let me just introduce myself, because you've seen Lonnie's name, but you haven't seen my name. My name's Delby Spath. I work for the Women's Institute for Housing and Economic Development. Lonnie is our interim executive director, and actually was on the submission that went to. Thank you for having us here, and we also brought with us Paul Lemieux from MHPI, which you're familiar with, and our architects, Craig Zorzi and Brian Fitzgerald. It's back there too. So just a little introduction of who we are. The Women's Institute is a nonprofit organization that started back in 1981. We operate in both Massachusetts and in Connecticut. My main office is in Connecticut. Lonnie is based in Boston. But as a nonprofit, we do have a mission to promote economic resilience and create stable homes by developing affordable housing that have a supportive housing component within them. And again, stressing the nonprofits, because many communities, when we enter into development stages within the communities, they think that we're just another developer. And I think that we want to make sure we make that stand.
Could you speak up? They can't hear in the back. I'm getting high signs back.
There's seats in the
That
front.
microphone only, so you know, is only for the television.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sorry, we don't have a microphone for the call.
I can be loud, so.
There you go, be as
And
loud
there's
as you
seats
can.
in the front. So why the Women's Institute? We've been operating since 1981. I think it started in Massachusetts, right, Lonnie? We have a sense of local commitment. We have a vision for the needs of the local community, and we try to incorporate those needs into our deals or our development projects. We also have a sophisticated staff. We deal a lot of projects that have complex financing structures. Most of the projects we do, we obtain financing through the state, various state housing agencies. We also know that as we develop within communities that we are really starting a relationship. We are neighbors and we are part of the community. And we try to strive at being good neighbors in those instances. And again, having a local focus, providing housing, which is desperately needed across both Massachusetts and Connecticut. We perform development work as a consultant. We do development work for other partners, which are owners, and we just do the development work, but we also do our own development and retain ownership going forward. In the specific with the proposal for Lake Street School, we were approached by MHPI as a sponsor. They came to us knowing that we do development work And supportive housing is really a focus of ours. So they approached us to see if that would be something we would be interested in pursuing. So we would be the developer and owner, and MHPI would be the supportive housing provider and management company operating the property. And we were introduced to Studio One, which you're familiar with because they actually did the work on the Prati School. Beautiful building, and we were quite impressed by that when we met with them. So I'm skipping right through all those slides that we're not showing on the screen. We gave a basic layout, a site layout, and unit configuration for the building in the packet that we submitted. Those are somewhat preliminary. Obviously, we would have to go through the zoning process and get approvals, but it was something, or a concept at least, that we could see that we could move forward with. We also provided in the packet a draft development budget and financing structure that we think we might be able to get to work for the project. Now, obviously, the process, as Mr. Hicks pointed out with the building committees and how long it takes some time for these projects to come to fruition. So we appreciate your time and patience, and we're willing to answer questions you have relative to our proposal.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
You may.
What do you think your population will look like, assuming this goes through the way that it's planned?
Well, our understanding is that there's a focus for senior housing within the
Senior
community.
housing?
Yeah.
I noticed their efficiencies primarily, so are they meant for one person, or are they gonna be big enough for a couple if they were married?
They're one bedrooms.
One-bedroom units service families for a husband and a wife. I think there was one two-bedroom unit in there.
There is on the first floor, I think.
And one of the things to perhaps share is that these are very preliminary, and these were just from the initial walkthrough of the facility earlier. And one of the things that we try to pride ourselves on is that we don't want to get too far into the process before we've had a chance to meet with the local stakeholders and the community to see what they feel might be best for our property. So obviously, anything that's in here can be looked at.
Another question I have is, was there 19 acres up there, Gary?
Yeah,
Of land? 18 acres?
after the water tank, about 18, I think.
Okay. Do you need the entire parcel of land? The only reason I say it is, in the back, which used to be the kids' playground, it adjoins some town property where we have a large water tank. And I'm not saying that we're not gonna, that we wanna keep it, but I'm saying we may wanna look at keeping it. Maybe we won't, maybe we'll sell the whole shebang. How important is that to you? How much of that, you could be thinking about this. If you can't give me an answer today, I'm not here to blindside you.
But-
Maybe you could thinking about that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think, I don't mean to interrupt, Ralph. I think the committee was very adamant about the land in the back. That's why we reached out to you
Okay.
again. Our goal was always to preserve that back area, give you folks enough room to access around the back of the building, and that playground level that came straight into the building, which kind of got the MHPI folks thinking when they first saw the building. It's just that land back on the hill that we wanted to preserve for the town.
So, and again, that's a perfect point, Tony, because we looked at several options through that meeting, and I know, Tom, you reached out to him because we had some questions about access to the backland behind there to the left side, and to find out what your needs were for how much property you really needed and would utilize. And that being said, we also brought up a lease option on the land for X amount of years, whatever that was. So, and all that's to be negotiated. As you know, we're in preliminary right now. I will say the layout is kind of mirrors what you have, Paul, as far as room size.
What's up at Prati.
Yeah, so
It's actually better because we have studio apartments.
you won't have any studios in Lake Street, I don't believe, if I read this right and if I looked at the layout right.
That's right, all ones and 34 units total. And again, it looks hardline, but it's conceptual. But yeah, there's 34 units, so there'd be 33 ones and 1, 2.
And those rooms are, they're almost all the same size when you get up to the upper level anyway, so. It's a nice layout. I think it's a good opportunity for you guys, for our community. You know, obviously, something like this doesn't put a burden on the tax rolls and on the school system, which is a plus for us. I have asked, as Paul knows, the senior center director, I asked her, and I know Paul's talked to her on several occasions, needs and what we need within our community, so. Again, everything is subject to negotiations, and I'm sure it is on your part.
Yes, we
But-
appreciate that,
but-
actually.
You know.
So speaking to the land, it creates options, you know. It could be for the future use for the town. It could be further development for us. And I think actually a lease agreement could actually be beneficial in that regard as you get down the road and deciding what you want to do with that.
Well, I know I probably won't be around, but the one thing I know they're not making anymore is land. So from a standpoint of a municipality, is we're limited on growth. So, you know, that's why, you know, in 100 years from now, you know, who knows what the town's gonna need. So, I mean,
We'll know.
you know, you'll know. Somebody in your corporation will know.
That's
Maybe not
correct.
you.
Through the chair, I have to ask, because well, two representatives on the committee that brought up the concerns, and the concern of looking into a lease came up. So how does that affect your business plan or your investment in the property?
We deal with lease relationships all the time. We do a lot of work with the housing authorities, and most of those housing authorities retain land. So entering into a lease agreement is not of issue for us.
It's fine. It doesn't preclude any of the financing that we would pull together to build out the school or anything. So we'd be very open to that.
Yeah, that would just be my concern, was the amount of investment you folks would look to put into that building. Similar to what happened at MHPI, how they maintained that building and transformed it and
beautiful.
kept it
It-
a beautiful
it's
facility.
Beautiful.
You know, and again, that's one that's in a downtown area. You guys, you know, the next project is located in a residential neighborhood where, you know, I think it's a win, but.
We do too.
And it would be low impact for that area for traffic. And then I think the other thing maybe just to point out too is that wanting to leave it open for further discussion, but to have a chance for a little bit of a mixed use there as well with the existing kitchen and facilities that are attached, and not automatically assume that that would be served by a unit or something else, to really have a chance to talk to the community about what that might benefit them with.
There are a lot of opportunities within the building. There are some different size spaces and things of that nature that I think, you know, lend themselves to being flexible and adaptable and used nicely.
Yeah, that's music to our ears to hear that that'd be considered as a multi-use, multi-purpose type facility. You know, and personally, I think we are attracted by this idea because of the involvement with MHPI, they have been a good neighbor. They've done a good job at that facility, and so it's their involvement is a natural fit with the town. So glad to hear it. This came about.
Any other questions?
Just say I agree with what Tony said. When I heard MHPI was involved, I know the great job they've done up at the old David Prati High School, where I went to high school, as a matter of fact. And reading your information, the work that you do it's wonderful work. And I know it's sometimes difficult work. So I thank you for coming to Spencer, and hopefully we'll be working with you.
Wonderful.
We'll look forward to the chance.
So, and I do have a couple of members from the building reuse.
Can you recognize?
Yeah, they walk out, or?
Jonathan was just here, Jonathan Viner. I know Chief Parsons is here, he was part of ours. So part of our committee, besides myself and Tony, and there was quite a few on it. Jonathan Viner, Chief Parsons, And I don't know if you guys have any questions that we didn't hit on. But again, through the committee I sat on, I will tell you that it was nothing but positive. And so we look forward to making this happen and become a reality, we hope. So
I do have a question for you.
we might throw one in.
We enter into communities all the time, and what is well-intentioned by the board and also by us, it's not always accepted by the community. So I'd really like to get your sense on whether the greater community is behind it. We sit through zoning hearings all the time, and we don't want to get caught with any surprises of people not being behind it 100%.
And I will tell you, I think you'll find that majority of the community alone, and we carry a large senior population in this town. It's huge. It's probably 1/3 of our community, if not better, is 60 and above.
Yep.
That will grow over the next several years. We expect that to close to almost double. So the need for housing is very strong as people try to live on what they take in when they hit retirement. As you know, you've seen it. Is it limited? So the owning the house no longer isn't because it may not be paid for, but to pay the taxes and still live on what they take in. So there's a strong need in this town for that. So,
Right.
because our population is growing, and the numbers from the state are astronomical where we're going to be in the next 10, 15 years. So I would not expect that you're going to hit very many hurdles in this town.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah, again, going back to the relationship with MHPI, I mean, since they've been there, there have been minimal issues up there. When they opened the facility, the town had an opportunity to go through the building. I overwhelmingly heard wonderful things about what people saw there. I think you picked a good partner to smooth the process out. I again don't think you'll see any issues.
They picked us.
There you go.
Could be a good marriage.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Tony's dad lives up there. We have many friends that live up there.
Wonderful.
So again, most people are familiar with it. And Tony sits outside and talks to all the guys and hears the stories.
Yep, that's it. I'm practically a resident.
I'm not wrong. So I think the community at large is going to, welcome you with open arms. I can't see it not being that way.
That's
to
great.
answer your question. So.
Great.
Our planners back, I don't know if you wanted to say anything on,
He just walked
on the record, or?
He's gone on the other side.
Oh, he's a
of the
busy guy.
meeting,
He's in with somebody. I think I
you-
saw somebody go by with blueprints he went with.
Hey, but I'm sure he'll be a party you'll be talking to going forward, along with Tom and this group too, so.
I just want to say too, just as an architect, and we're going to be proactive as we get further along in the process. We, like our team, likes to, we're going to meet with the building officials, fire chief and police chief, and we're going to sit down with your, roundtable discussions with your, DPW and everybody like that, and department heads, and, make sure that everyone knows what we're doing and be very upfront about what our plans are and listen for feedback. Access to the building and things that are very important for life safety, we're very interested in as well. So we're very proactive about those types of things. So, and that's down the road. We're still designing now, but we will come, to see everyone, your building commissioner and so forth. So.
Well, I thank you for coming tonight. I think this is a start of something great.
Sounds good.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
much
Have a
for
good
coming
evening.
out. Thank you.
Drive safe.
I know, I told you this was gonna get worse.
You're just going to give it a minute. So, next item is action item, appoint CMRPC delegate and an alternate delegate for fiscal year 2019.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burnett, have you enjoyed being in that role?
I live for it, Ralph.
Have you been able to go to some meetings
I've
or?
made, I think, 4 or 5 of the meetings.
Okay, then if it's all right with you, I'm gonna move to reappoint you.
Yeah, there's a meeting coming up, that I'm gonna be making on the 16th, I think it is. Yeah. That's fine.
I'll second that.
Should we leave the primary delegate open for?
Well,
Yes, for the new guy.
superintendent? Steve is the one that was on it.
Yeah, right.
And Steve has shown interest to
He has.
try to remain involved in that. So I would like to, we won't move on the other part because I think that's an asset to us to have him involved if he acts as a delegate.
Well, maybe if the new highway superintendent wanted to become the primary and Steve became the alternate, I would not be opposed.
Well,
Why don't we do this? Why don't we appoint you now, and if we have to, we can unappoint you
Perfect.
and appoint Steve at that
love that.
time. I'm not opposed to that. But I think somebody needs to be there for the moment.
that'd probably work because they're gonna, don't forget, I'm only in there just to fill in until the next round. So that may all work out.
Okay.
So I would say that, why don't we hold on this,
Okay.
all right?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is there a meeting coming up in the next month that you need to
Yes.
cover?
Warren
Yes.
can go to that meeting.
Yes, I can go to that meeting.
Okay,
So,
fine then.
so we'll hold on that. And will you reach out to Steve again, just to make sure that we're not, and like I say, I think we got the next one, the 16th, I think.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out by then.
Okay.
Next item, appoint select board member to assist with negotiations on the community host agreement with. Excuse me. As you all know, this is the point we're at. So we need to appoint somebody from the board to assist with those negotiations.
Mr. Chairman, are you up to the task? I know you've got good experience in that. You want to do it, Gary, is what I'm saying.
I'll take it on if nobody else has it.
Anybody else very interested in it? Wendy, Warren?
I think Gary's the
Tony?
man.
And I move to appoint Gary to that position.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, that was good. Town administrators report. Mr. Administrator,
Okay, how do I,
where's your PowerPoint?
right here, how do I, oh, here we go.
You got it?
It'll automatically connect, Tom.
It should automatically go.
It's
Oh,
coming
you
up,
have
it's
a-
coming up, Tom,
Okay.
or it was.
Stop pushing the buttons. Give it a chance.
Give it a minute. There you go.
Okay. All right, so I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation to talk about Blight, downtown Blight. Something I've been hearing quite a bit about since I first interviewed here. And my plan here is to kind of give you a sense of the problem, which I know that I'm really kind of speaking to the choir here because many of you have been present to this problem of disinvestment, of poverty, of neglect for generations. And I can tell you before I begin it, as a newcomer to Spencer, it doesn't take long when you first arrive in Spencer to walk through these streets and get a real handle on that neglect and disinvestment. And the impact, the toll it's taken on people and families and children, pretty dramatic. So what I'd like to do is kind of go through some of the pictures I've taken of the problem, which you're aware of, talk a little bit about existing resources, focusing on the Community Development Block Grant, which I think is the most consequential resource, a financially significant resource. And then we can get into the discussion about the new bylaw, which is really why we're here talking about this tonight. So here are some of the pictures I've put together that show the issue, show the problem. Some of these properties are vacant and abandoned, like this one. Yeah, vacant and abandoned and severely distressed. Vacant. You can see the red X there. A property that you all know that's unused, and I don't have to tell you all that this is prime location. This is prime real estate in downtown Spencer. So any efforts to repurpose this site would be well received, I'm sure, by the town.
Mr. Chairman, that was, that was successful when the Ryans ran it. They may had a great chicken stew on Wednesdays. If you had to call up and get it reserved, or it would be gone when you got there. Getting the right person in there and working with the landlord perhaps to do upgrades that may need to be done. Because it's that's been there a long time. But you're absolutely right. That's a piece of property that should be able to be repurposed and put back into use. And God willing, that Moxie sign will remain, and I'll be able to go in there and get a Moxie like I used to do.
So we all know this building.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, once again, you might want to call the Ashburnham town administrator, although she's new, but she could do some history. There's an old firehouse in South Ashburnham that looks very similar to that. It's not exact, obviously, but very similar to that. And when I first went to work there, it was starting to look pretty bad. Not as bad as that, but starting to look pretty bad. That was rehabbed, and I don't know how it was done. And there's a little fire museum on one side, and there's a business in the other. I think it's a construction business. And the building looks super duper. And you might want to talk to them about what did they do to get that old firehouse up and running, because it's so similar. That's assuming it's still salvageable. I have no idea. I'm not an engineer.
Okay. So here are some other parcels right along Main Street. So you're saying that blight can range in its definition to the vacant, severely distressed, to the more outdated, tired appearance.
Yeah, 138 is not vacant on the first floor. I just went in there and bought a dryer over the weekend. That's where Bill White and his brother Barry put a lot of their appliances.
Right.
You can go in and look. Upstairs, it looks vacant. I'm assuming it is. I know there were people living upstairs not too long ago. What's that?
Bill White's mother was.
Yeah, right. When his dad
Alice
was
lives up
sick,
there?
Yeah, they did it over. His father was there until he passed, and his mother now.
But it's gotta be, if Alice is in there, it's gotta be nice. I'm sure he's taken good care of her. My father used to live in that building, and my brother, many moons ago, on the second floor. The facade needs some work. I think with some of these buildings, they are usable, but the facade looks tired and old, and it is, and needs to be spruced up. And we need to find a way to encourage building owners to do that.
And I think it's.
And I have some comments on that.
Great.
Ralph.
I don't mean to slow you down, I apologize.
That's okay. No, that's no problem. More parcels along the same corridor. We all know this.
Yeah.
This property.
That was an A&P food store.
Yes, it was.
When I grew up in town.
So let's just talk. I want to kind of move quickly through CDBG. I think you all know. I have a good handle on it. I just wanted to just review. It's one of the longest standing federal block grant programs in the country. It's administered by Housing and Urban Development, and there are 3 national objectives that apply to CDBG throughout the country: benefit low income persons, aid in the prevention of slums and blight, and meet a need having a particular urgency. This is not often used. This might be used after a tornado or a hurricane or something specific like that. In 2007, Spencer downtown received the designation, CDBG designation, which triggers the second national objective to aid in the reduction of slums and blight. once the CDBG designation takes effect, it's in effect for 10 years, and it was just renewed in 2017. So we're now beginning another 10-year period. Now, what this means is any CDBG eligible activity can take place in this district. So when we talk about housing rehab or facade improvement programs, it can be in any parcel. And that's the distinction I'd like to make is when I was in Worcester, I managed a CDBG program where homeowners would have to apply. So when you're in a situation where we have a designation for a whole area, that allows the whole area to benefit from CDBG activities. And then this is, again, more information on how the CDBG designation was met. It needs to meet one of these two conditions. One, public improvements throughout the area are in a general state of deterioration. Two, 25% at least of the properties exhibit one or more of those characteristics you can see on the screen. So we just were notified through the State Department of Housing and Community Development that the town will be receiving $555,000 for the design work involved in the Cherry Wall Lloyd Dyer roadway improvements. In the recent years, as I understand it, the CDBG applications have included 1 year design and then a 2nd year construction, which you're seeing the 2nd year of the Chestnut Street project right now. The other part of the award is housing rehab for 14 units, a mix of single-family and multifamily housing units. The Pioneer Valley Planning Commission handles the program design and the intake. As you can imagine, there's a lengthy intake, a lengthy waiting list. Households who participate, there's a 10-year affordable housing deed restriction that runs with the land in exchange for the federal dollars, the tax dollars. So if the property changes hands, the deed restriction stays in place for that 10-year period to preserve those units for low mod income individuals. Just a quick snapshot on previous years' housing rehab projects. You can see, there's 3 years within the last 10 years where a substantial number of units have been assisted with federal tax dollars. And so the plan, what I'd like to propose for fiscal 19 for next year will be the construction phase for the Cherry Wall Lloyd Dyer roadway improvement, which is already in the pipeline, following the same pattern. But I'd like to propose a downtown facade improvement program, to get to your point, Ralph, that you mentioned earlier, to make some money available for Main Street merchants to help them improve their facades. And a couple of points here to make. We have currently right now $50,000 in CDBG program income that's sitting on account that can be used as basically seed money to design the program, to get it ready for rollout in July of next year. And you can see, what you think would be eligible would be eligible. A full facade improvements, awnings, doors, entryways. There's an opportunity to develop design standards, which is in line with the work that Paul's already doing with the Downtown Improvement Initiative, to do some wayfinding within the downtown. And there are flexible financing options. The City of Worcester has a facade program where they give a limit. They issue the grants limited per project. Clinton has a facade program where they have a 5-year forgivable payment loan. Multiple ways to structure this. So that's something that I'd like to propose for fiscal 19 CDBG activities. Switching gears here briefly, this is something we've talked about this year. The U.S. Treasury approved through the U.S. Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, opportunity zones, which allows investors to gain favorable tax treatment by deferring their taxes on capital gains by investing those into these economic activities in the area. We did receive the designation for the downtown to be part of this opportunity zone. So this is largely outside of the town's ability, but again, it's just a tool in the toolbox to help encourage investment in the downtown. You know, as we think about developers and their interests in investing in this area. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I forwarded to the board last Friday or 2 Fridays ago a memo showing 4 examples of blight bylaws that towns have passed within the last several years. And if you've had a chance to look through it, I think you can see that the definition of blight is broad, and it varies by town. And you can see, I'm not going to read through all these, but you can see how the definition of blight is defined. And we talk about unsecured buildings, structurally unsound buildings, properties with overgrown vegetation. The list, this is just a snapshot I pulled from each of the various bylaws, so the list goes on and on. And so the goal, and those are the 4 towns I gave you as examples: Agawam, Longmeadow, Milford, and Weymouth.
Mr. Chairman, I thought Longmeadow, Weymouth and Agawam were the most specific. And there are parts that we could pull out of that when we do our own bylaw that I think would be very helpful. One of them was very wishy-washy. I think it was Milford. Was very wishy-washy, I thought.
Right. Okay.
But the Agawam and Weymouth nailed it down. And there are things in one that you could take to put from the other, because they both had a lot of good points to pick from.
And I agree, Ralph. I just want to kind of walk through just procedurally.
I just want to comment while you were on
Right.
it, because I did take the time to read this before the meeting.
The goal would be to have a new general bylaw brought before town meeting for their authorization, which would then require approval by the Attorney General's office, as all new bylaws are required to be approved. But here's the key point, and this is really, I think, when we get into the nitty-gritty here. What the town decides as far as policy development, I hope that, and my goal is that it aligns with the town's capacity to enforce the bylaw. Because if we're going to be taking a new, more enhanced, more aggressive or assertive, let's say, enforcement posture, we need to know that the town departments have the capacity to carry out this work. So I have invited the town staff here to be with you tonight to have the discussion, and you know, and I see this process as sort of an iterative process where we start drafting a bylaw and then getting feedback from the board along the way, and sort of tweaking it until we all sort of feel comfortable in the room that yes, this is what the town wants. This is what the policy developers would like to see happen, and this is what the town staff feels confident being able to execute. So
Or to be able to enforce.
To enforce.
Where it's gonna fall. So.
That's right. So that's where we are. So
Well, you know, that's all well and good, but this problem has been around in this town for decades. I want to get aggressive and I want to enforce. But I also want to be part of a comprehensive approach that is not only to attack blight, but also to foster economic development.
Right.
I've asked for that Blight Report to be updated, and the consulting group, was it the downtown development, where they cataloged every property downtown and cataloged every financial option available to each property. I want those overlaid with the Blight Report, and as well as request some crime statistics for the town, see if we can get, within that area to include in that.
Right, and so if I could, Mr. Chairman, I asked Paul to do just that. Part of what you described, Tony, is overlaying both of those two blight reports, the property assessment reports, and what that yielded was about 50 properties which are counted in both reports, which I would argue would be that's the
gist of it.
That's the target.
the focus.
Right.
Those are the first properties you hit.
Right. So these are all tools in our toolbox. So we have all this going on. It all fits in what I consider to be phases of this program. I want it to be a program that is not solely a zoning issue. It's not solely we go and we've talked about this. We go doing we have an outreach to this target area. We catalog. Next step is to catalog these properties. We've talked about that.
Right.
The next portion of that program is a counseling, where we do outreach. We push it out to these communities. We come out and we talk to these people and tell them that we've got these resources available to us, down to the point where we have, if they can't do something with the property, we've got real estate people we can help bring to the party to get stuff taken care of. But comprehensive. We should build within those silos, everything. Then we get into our enforcement piece.
Right.
And it's got to be a comprehensive plan. And that's within that plan, we've got to have a strong, detailed bylaw, I think. And I appreciate you putting this together. But I think I'd like to also, and we've talked about this in detail, get that process either with the planner, through your office, and get that program started, and what those steps are, and what is involved in each one of those steps. This is something that's not going to be easy to throw out and get
It
done.
has to be continued and ongoing.
Right. I mean, as far as enforcement, I mean, there's probably hundreds of codes out there that are out there that we're either not up to date, or we could add to those issues. I just it's an issue that has been, along with improving schools and fixing roads.
Right.
It's something that's been out there, and we've been working hard to get all this. We've got to have this stuff bubble to the surface,
Right.
and moving forward on.
I agree with 100%. Perhaps there's some low-hanging fruit, so to speak, to address the subsection of the abandoned and foreclosed structures in town. I say that because some of these bylaws, I think 3 out of the 4 bylaws talk about a registration where you are putting some modest burden on the property owner or the bank or the trustee, whoever owns the property, to be secured in a manner approved by the town, a 24-hour contact number on display on the property. Some of these things are, I think we can, relative to the vacant and abandoned buildings, we can achieve. I think it will get challenging when we start to talk about some of these, and to your point, Tony, how do we affect change? Because we can't just club people over the head.
Right.
We have to talk about some incentives, which is why I included what I did in the presentation tonight about what can we do to assist you.
I agree 100%. That counseling portion of it I think should be the most intense and have the most effort with it. We have the benefit of knowing what we want to target right away first. We know who we have to contact, and we just need to get together what we can offer to these folks. And there's pieces of it up here.
And I think to Tony's point, not to speak for you, but I think what we're looking for is a starting point. And I'm glad you brought up what grants are out there, and that is the starting point. I will tell you this, we'd love to have a bylaw written today that would put enough bite into this to make it really happen. The problem is as you know, it goes to the AG's office and it could very well get kicked, and then you're back to square one and trying to get started. So I want to be very cautious.
That's right.
On that end of it, because we may get, to the finish line and really be at the starting line. I want to avoid that at every cost.
Well, to your point, Mr. Chairman, I chose these really with the really templates for the board to work with and modify, because these have all been passed both at the local level and by the Attorney General's office. So if you take a look at the fees involved, if, for instance, the comparison between Agawam and Longmeadow relative to the registration of foreclosed buildings, Agawam has no fee associated, provided there's compliance. Longmeadow requires $100 fee right off the top. You know, so there's an example of a gradation of difference. And so I think if you go through this, you can, which I'm sure you have, you can see, you can start to pick out elements of a bylaw that we can, I think, easily draft and have ready for town meeting in the fall.
Yeah, and we know these things can be updated year after year.
It can be
I mean,
amended. And
right.
That's right.
Right. Again, this is all great. I really want this to be part of a comprehensive plan. To me, this is almost, it's very, very important. It's almost the back end. It's, you know, well, it could be the front too, but it leads to the back end bad stuff that could happen during the blight fines and enforcement. But it also, you know, I really just want to, where that project resides, maybe it's economic development to draft you something, or I'd be glad to work with you specifically to create that plan, but it's just something that I've wanted to get rolling for a while.
Take those four and bring them to the economic development.
Sure.
See what their thoughts are.
Yeah, I'll email Paul and see if we get this on the next agenda. I think we have a September meeting.
That might jump us ahead a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you're talking about a linkage between, so we have the town staff on the front end of the enforcement right here.
Right.
And I think what I hear you saying, Tony, is more broader linkage to economic development assistance that's outside of the realm of these folks right here. We're talking about, you know, are there lenders, are there other groups that the economic development community can point to bring into the mix? Is that what I hear you saying?
I think right. I think a comprehensive plan, if it's successful, will lessen the burden on the back end.
Right.
You know, we should have that. We should have that plan written up, that bylaw written up, have as thorough and specific as possible. But I really think the outreach and the counseling portion of it are the real critical portions of attacking this blight. And you know, we tried it. We tried it, but it was this consulting firm we had come in, wrote a 2-paragraph letter, it sent it out, and people were like,
never got heard from.
But if we go to these folks with a comprehensive plan saying, this is what's coming down the track, either get on board or you're going to be in the way of the train.
Right. My only, and I understand and agree. The only concern I have is, let's talk about the facade improvement program for a moment. At the end of the day, people will decide on their own, does this make sense for me as a business owner? Do I want to do this? And if they say, no, take a hike, town of Spencer, there's not much we can do. I mean, honestly, we can encourage people, we can bring them to the table, we can invite them to forums, we can try to appeal to their sense of community, which I think is at the heart of what you're talking about, Tony.
Right.
An obligation to community and being a good citizen and what's expected of you. Sort of we're all in this together, sort of. But I think you know, and I think what will have them. I think the enforcement makes people act.
Yep.
Enforcement puts a burden on people to have to act, to have to do something, and. But I'm certainly open to the whole picture, to the program as you describe it, and putting in place something that's achievable and.
Yeah, I just don't want to be an enforcement arm. I think
Right.
I think we have enough opportunity for these real estate owners and business owners to put enough benefits in front of them and really make an effort to explain the benefits of these programs. And and get creative and create additional opportunities. Again, I'm a broken record, just a comprehensive
I understand.
A to Z. We don't do things A to Z in municipal government. You know, I'd like to get a clear, organized process that everyone from the planner and your economic development group, wherever that morphs into, down to enforcement.
Right, understood.
But this is a critical piece of it. I don't want to, I'm not denigrating any work
Right, I
that's been
understand,
done to this point.
So I did ask the town staff to be here.
And that was my question, is, as you discussed with your staff, what's it on?
Well, I'd like to ask them to weigh in. I mean, this is, you know, what's achievable? What do we feel comfortable? I mean, let's have the honest conversation. We're talking about a defined area of town where we're looking to make a concerted effort to make some real substantial long-term change. I don't have the answer other than trying to give the board suggestions on a bylaw, but I mean, I welcome the feedback through the chair. I mean,
And again, I think that, I mean, as you look at Main Street within itself, you know, and you take Spencer Auto Body, I'm gonna use that for an example, and I was on Alpha Cars today, and they're promoting Spencer as being their, quote, their next shop to open, and what their plans are, and if you look at the images of what they have on their website, that tells me is that corner just became another mainstay of Main Street. So as I look at Main Street and you pick, and a good example, when I was talking to the owner of John's, saying, you know, and this happened to be a Saturday, as I said, what's going on with the building? I see the signs down. He says they weren't promoting it for me. So, I mean, there's some options we have that maybe through promotion, and I'm gonna go back to that because we've had this conversation in the subject block too, is are we really promoting the town? Is there an arm or an avenue we should be using that could fit in with what we're doing here? I don't know that, but I mean, it just seems to me that as you look around and as a building becomes vacant or becomes available, it's not necessarily what I think should fit there, but it is whether it fits within what we think Spencer should be.
right. Has there ever been a real active merchants association that's been, I mean, when you talk about promotion, there's no better promotion than self-promotion for the group that exists here. That's, you know, we can promote it. I think towns can do only so much.
Right.
But has there been a merchants association that's been active in?
Not a downtown one, but there is the Exchange Club.
Okay.
And it's been a while since I met with them when I was superintendent of schools. I used to meet with them occasionally. I don't know how many downtown businesses belong to that. Okay, they've got a good nucleus of people and they do a lot of good. They collect a ton of money for
Right.
kids, yeah, for coats and whatnot at wintertime. But you might want to contact them and maybe work with them to start some outreach to those business people who don't belong to the Exchange Club to join the Exchange Club. And that might be a way to get things going. Unless you've got somebody downtown who's willing to start from scratch and do a downtown business association. And somebody wants to step forward, fine. Otherwise, I would try to work with the Exchange Club. And maybe they could even have a subgroup of downtown merchants that could, you know, be a part of the group, but, you know, meet alone and talk about common needs and concerns. And we as a town should indicate, I think, that we're willing to help them in any way that we can. The downtown, I mean, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, that downtown didn't have hardly anything empty. I remember as a kid walking up Mechanic Street and all those stores were full. There were Five and Dimes, a couple of Five and Dimes. There was a hardware store, Main Street too. You know, all sorts of things were going on up there that slowly eroded Let's face it, every community has a hard time getting people to come and shop in their downtown.
So-
They go to the shopping centers, they go to the malls, and most importantly now, unfortunately, for the Downtown Business Association, they go on the internet.
Well, and that was a conversation I had with Tom today, is that, before the plaza was there, that was Club and Shoe.
Right.
So you had probably 300 workers working out of there. They got
probably
out of
lived.
work on their Thursday, walk to Spencer Savings Bank, cash their check, and to go back to the A&P being on the corner, because that's where we used to shop.
Exactly.
So people spent their money in the downtown.
Right.
As I told Tom today, the trouble is people will drive to Millbury to spend their money in the mall.
Yeah.
So you need to, and I had the conversation with Selectman Hick today, is when I stayed at my grandmother's on Highland Street, you didn't go to the grocery store. Every community, every area of the town had their own grocery store. If you
Right.
lived on Chestnut Street, they had their own. If you lived on Grove Street in that end of town, they had their own.
Right.
So, I mean, it's nice to look at it, but we need to be able to promote a business that's viable, that unfortunately, we don't have the walkie traffic based on what used to be in a community when we were kids, and that's where we're
Mr.
right.
Chairman, I know citizen input is later on. You do have, even if there aren't departments that would like to address this issue.
And I'm gonna give everybody the opportunity, Billy, on citizens input, and that's where their opportunity will come in.
Is also.
But I know, and I was gonna address him next, I do see his, believe me, I can see.
Through the chair, okay. The EDC has met, and we've been talking more than laying out flower baskets. Months ago, John and I sponsored a get-together at the Sugden Block, John Stevens, when he was on the board. And we had almost all the merchants in there. And the idea of floating of getting a merchants group together was very positive that day. But like everything else, a million things happened, and
Right.
so the EDC has talked about that being done on the side. Now, and I think we'll learn more about this, and we've been asked by Paul to put together something for September. We have a meeting with the EDC that night. And I think we're gonna put together.
Oh, with the sign initiative, the
Right, and
downtown.
we've been talking about marketing
Right.
plans and outreach and push
Right.
to markets of what's available in town and industries that we'd like to come to town and the benefits of Spencer being in this town. So I think the planner is knee-deep in doing just that, getting that marketing together.
But it doesn't solve what we're trying to hit.
Right.
So that's the key part.
Right, so this is what will, that's another tool to hopefully have a positive effect on the issue we're addressing. But, yeah, so we've been talking about this at the EDC as well, as far as can we do under the counseling silo and the outreach silos we had on our plan to work with Paul and get him to a point where he would reach out to all the major property owners in downtown, separate from the bylaw, but we thought it'd be better to have it incorporated to the
So let me
plan that
ask
we're
you
doing.
this, Tony, because you spearheaded this has been going on for years, this didn't happen yesterday. So as I look at between Agawam, Long Meadow, Milford, Wayland, should we take that as a tool and try to implement and then get Paul and the building department involved to try to figure out where we're going next to get it moving?
Yeah, I think running in parallel, we as a board should, I think we take the best of all the bylaws and we put a strong bylaw out there. But in parallel, that parallel effort, I believe there should be a process to handle what first is a blight issue, but then it could be a economic redevelopment effort.
Meanwhile, move on the.
And move on the outreach, the catalog, the counseling, and this bylaw, working with our staff, gets strengthened, so we have the enforcement arm
Right.
taken care of. Again, this is an important piece that not only allows us to, we're doing enough work on this that we know who we have to go
Right.
do the outreach to.
Right.
But this has to be strong and ironclad almost, so that we can start enforcing.
Which is why I'm wondering, do we start with the outreach, know the facade and at least start somewhere?
I think it probably, maybe we do it in the EDC to get the overriding plan done, have the planner be the author of that and work with you.
That's
Feed
great.
it back to the administrator and then come up with.
And at the same time, we work on this blight bylaw and make sure that's taken
I
care
just
of.
want to make sure that's the intent.
I agree. I think that's the way we should go.
I understand what you're saying, linking them together so they're working as
So
together
something's
as.
moving
right.
forward no matter what.
Right, I understand. Yeah, I hear you.
We've been promising the citizens in this town that we're gonna be moving on this, and I want them to know about the effort, so.
Yep,
Through the chair, who would enforce something like that?
the building inspector, I think.
Right.
I guess it's my turn.
It is. That's why I said if you had anything to say.
Yeah.
I didn't think you were bashful, but.
You know, I've been looking at this, actually all afternoon, since 4 o'clock, because I've been dealing with some other issues in town. One thing that I guess I've gotten out of this thing and looking at it, it became pretty obvious. What are we gonna do to enforce this regarding my department where, you know, I work a 3.5-day week, and I think something that's going to get created here is going to be a lot more than 3.5 days a week. And I think, quite frankly, it's going to most likely mean an additional person or 2 people in that office. I can also envision a lot more in attorney's fees. I can envision a lot more in service fees through our constables. I'm looking at, I guess, the blight issue, not only for Main Street, but for the rest of the town, because, you know, I'm looking at what all 4 towns are trying to put in place with their towns. And I think that with all of that combined, we're gonna pull from a lot of those different towns, and we're gonna come up with something. But we're gonna have a clerk in that office, I believe, answering phones for complaints on top of complaints, because those bylaws are pretty intricate. I mean, there's a lot going on. Whether it's a pile of rocks, a bunch of pipe, or lumber, or something, a car, a boat, whatever, somebody's gonna be calling the office complaining about that. Somebody's gonna have to listen to that phone call. And then someone's gonna have to take action on it. And I can tell you that just in the recent couple weeks, the amount of money that we're spending in attorney's fees for people who are non-compliant in town is astronomical. Okay, and I think we're blowing our budget out of the water, and that's just for one instance who, you know, for you know, some folks that are being non-compliant. So with that, I think that's gonna get compounded astronomically by the time we start dealing with all the other issues outside of, you know, housing issues that we're dealing with. So I think that at some point, somebody's gonna have to seriously consider how much money we're gonna spend in our budget for my department, because I think it's going to really get crazy with that, because the enforcement part, which I'm seeing people thinking about, okay, enforcement's gonna be maybe the way to get people to pay attention. Well, we can certainly get people to pay attention, okay? But it's going to cost time and it's gonna cost money to do that. So going forward with this, I really think that you need to think about where we're gonna be with the budget for this, and it's gotta come from someplace. And I know we only have, you know, 3.5 days at town hall now. Are we talking a 5-day week? Are we talking an additional, you know, local inspector? Are we talking about another clerk? I know my clerk's out straight. And with what I've got going on in town right now, I don't have any extra hours, and I'm way over. So with that, I think that's a real important part of how it's gonna get considered and put in place. And it's not only me, I think the fire chief's gonna be spending a lot more time dealing with phone calls. I think the police department's gonna be doing that as well. They're gonna drive around, call me and say, hey, Bill, we got an issue over here at whatever Mechanic Street or something like that. I think that's probably falling under the blight bylaw. You gotta deal with that. Somebody's gonna have to take that phone call and deal with it. And then you're gonna run into that one instance or several where somebody just absolutely doesn't care. They wanna be non-compliant, okay? And then you've got a building that might be in a blight condition, then all of a sudden, the guy doesn't want to tear it down, but it needs to be torn down. Where's the money coming from? We have to enforce the bylaw. So are we gonna put together some money in a budget that's gonna be tearing buildings down in addition to what we're already considering? These are questions I have. I'm kind of curious about that because it is gonna be interesting.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to Bill's remarks, there's a way to maybe possibly phase in this effort by perhaps bringing to the fall town meeting a bylaw that's narrowly written for just those vacant and abandoned buildings. So we're talking about a registration for vacant and abandoned buildings, and I think the total on that compiled list is about 9 or 10. So that, I think, perhaps, I don't know, you correct me if I'm wrong, that might be one way to handle this, phasing in the vacant and abandoned buildings registration for the fall, and then taking some time to see how that's received, and then going back to town meeting in the spring or some future date to do a more broadly written bylaw. I'm just putting that out there for consideration.
Mr. Chairman, I fully expect to put my money where my mouth is. We're gonna have some additional revenue coming into town, as you know. I'm not gonna jump at giving you a full-time assistant and another clerk right away, but my goal has always been, when I ran for the one-year term 2.5 years ago, was to have this town hall open full-time. We've made some baby steps in that direction, and I'm optimistic over the next year or two that we can continue to move forward until this town hall is open full-time like it should be. For a town of 12,000 people, you should not be working 3.5 days a week. You and your staff should be working 5 days a week. And if you come to us with proof that you need another staff member, all right, I think the board will look at that very, very surreptitiously. And if you can prove us that you need the help, we'll find the money to do it. We've either got to, it's time to either do something about this or roll up the sidewalks. There is a substantial investment that has been made in the downtown area, Chestnut Street area, okay? Further down on Main Street, there's a project going on right now. The town administrator talked about Cherry and Wall Streets. A lot of money's going in, a lot of federal money, but also some town money, all right? So we're doing our part, all right? And if a landlord doesn't want to cooperate, and I don't want to be a bully here, I'd like to work with them cooperatively as much as we can. But if they're not going to, well, darn it all, if we have to go to court like we're doing with that one particular case that I know what you're talking about very well, all right, we have to do it. We also have to protect citizens who are living in some of these properties that aren't up to stuff. Okay, they're renting them, they're in there, and there are some landlords, a minority, I think, I'm pretty sure, who take their sweet time fixing things and don't always fix it the best that they possibly could. That needs to stop, or the town of Spencer is gonna become Southbridge. And I've jokingly said more than once, Mr. Klanzik, that my greatest fear is, before I die, is that I'll be on Route 49, and when I enter from East Brookfield, the town is gonna say, "Welcome to North Southbridge." And sorry to say that to Southbridge, but it's true. I don't want that to happen. And Southbridge has cleaned up their act quite a bit since then, too. They have. They've got a nice downtown area. I don't know if they've got a blight bylaw or not. But I don't want to see us go the route of some of these other towns that the downtown area is a mess. The town itself is deteriorating. Something needs to be done. And if we don't spend some money, I don't expect to get anything done unless we spend some money. I'm not naive. I don't think that all these landlords are gonna say, "Oh, you want us to do this?" Sure, we will. All right? I know that there are some that are gonna resist us. And I know it's gonna be more work for you. I knew you were the one that's gonna have to implement that. That's why I said the building inspector, because I knew. All right? And certainly if you need more help, it's gonna be up to us to get it. Otherwise, we might as well stop and go on to the next item on the agenda. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Okay?
And regarding additional staff, I have to say that, right now, we're doing okay on 3.5 days. I have to tell you that I've probably got the best clerk in the world.
You're lucky.
And she is phenomenal, and she does a lot for me. And between the two of us, we've managed to handle a lot. And I think the additional staff is
is gonna come into play when, you know, this program may be implemented. And I think that's the time when we need to consider, you know, additional staff, but yet, let's see how it works out before we decide additional staff is appropriate.
Absolutely.
And let's see where it goes, and see what kind of input we get, let's see what kind of complaints we get, and see how it works. And then we can probably consider additional staff, but that's probably when the time might be, or additional hours. You know, I'm not saying, hey, we need 40 hours tomorrow, that's not my point. But if this kind of a program goes in place, I think then that might be the time to start thinking about, well, listen, it looks like things are starting to get taxed a little bit, maybe it's time for us to think about maybe additional people. So that's my thought. So.
And I think Bill makes a good point. Again, iterative process, seeing what works, developing something, you know, seeing how it gets rolled out, see how effective it is. You know, bylaws can always be amended at town meeting.
You gotta crawl before you walk, Mr. Town Administrator. And I'm all for crawling first, and once we can walk, and then we can run. I don't mind phasing it in, I think that's a sensible thing to do.
Through the chair, the only thing that, I like the idea of phasing it in, but it's not gonna do the job that we're trying to do on Main Street. And, you know, there's some of the buildings there are a health issue. Lisa, you know, there's some, I've walked it, Tony hasn't been down there, but some of the buildings they're not safe.
Right.
Period.
You don't have to go.
Okay, so if you just go with vacant buildings and what else did you say? Vacant ones and abandoned buildings?
Yeah.
I think they're the same, right? Yeah. But anyways, you're not gonna be even touching the stuff that, you know, Tony and I have talked about, which is more concerning, is the facades of the buildings that are falling down.
Right.
They had it in Boston where the facade fell off. And we can walk downtown here, and you can see pieces hanging and pieces that have fallen. We got buildings on Wall Street where they put up barriers because the bricks are falling and hitting the barriers and landing in the street.
Oh, like UMass.
And they, you know, that happens to be a vacant building, but the ones on Main Street aren't vacant, and they're falling apart and materials falling off the buildings. That has to be addressed.
Right, and I think back to the point that you made earlier, Tony. I think getting a facade improvement program in place, CDBG funded, maybe even other funds that are out there, maybe local tax dollars to supplement that, and energize the EDC. Do a full on outreach to these people who have historically, as I understood, have said no, we're happy with the way we are, and you know I'm willing to be a part of that.
That's what I would like to see done. That's what I'd like to work with these folks and say, okay, 6 weeks down the road, this is going to be an enforcement issue. We have this available to do this. We have this for your facade. And this is a code violation here. Here are the 15 things we have at your disposal.
Right.
And I've asked for several years, please, confirm this, that I've asked the prior administration to look to, creative tax incentives that the town could offer. In addition, that's when certain people listen. So I'd really like to find a way to get this outreach going, and in my mind it was that report, the creation of the report and the overlay of the report to spur that. And since it's almost done, I mean that's our target. That's our target. Let's talk to the planner about the best way to do that, which we've been doing on Saturdays. When we meet one Saturday a month, it's not moving as quickly as I'd like it to happen. But I really want that outreach effort to start. Even maybe it wasn't right to throw that into a blight project. I just thought it was all one
effort.
Process
I understand.
that could be brought together. And
somewhere.
Yeah, we have it's our opportunity. We have the names. We have all this work that we've done. Municipalities are horrible at bringing together stuff that projects they've done in the past and make them, put them into action. I mean, I don't know how many binders we have up in the office of building assessments and that have never, I'd really like to put into action what a prior effort brought to us, and that's financial opportunities for all these blighted buildings in the downtown area. I really want to start that outreach. I hope, I won't speak for everybody, it's just what I'd like to see
It's
done.
time to move forward and get it moving. I think that's where we gotta go with it, no matter what. And, Warren's dead on. If you go down and you got the top of the building falling on the porch, the only thing that's stopping it was it landed on the top of the front. And the problem is, we have a bigger issue, because then it becomes public safety when it starts falling into the sidewalk or into the street, which does give us the power to do something at that point. Not us, but you. And that's the stuff that's in place, and I think Tony's point, not to speak for you, is we don't wanna see all these buildings down the street in that disarray and falling in the sidewalk. I think that's your whole point.
Yep.
Is if we don't stop or start somewhere, we're never gonna get there, so.
Here.
And the overriding issue is, I never want to stop and not do what's right because of expense behind it.
Right.
Let's, we're more than willing to support our staff, but this is the right thing to do. This is what our citizens are asking us for.
I think it's been their forefront for a long time.
Yeah.
And never moved, so.
Yeah. I mean,
Enough?
a lot of the stuff that we're doing now is gonna be, we're cleaning up all these roads around these neighborhoods. We're doing all this work. Why, if we're let 55 buildings in that area go right away?
Right.
Or make a decision at that point.
Right.
What you're gonna do with it,
Right.
so.
So, Mr. Chairman, just as far as next steps, is the board, would you like to see me, in partnership with the staff, get a draft together that you can start really digging into and?
You want a motion, I'll make it.
Personally, and just to follow up, personally, I think that between you and staff, if you looked at those 4 proposals, because some of the stuff in the ones I read, you might as well throw away because it didn't mean anything.
Right.
But I think if you and staff looked at it, and I've also asked Tony, I said, I think we should look at it and give them to Tom and let him overlay them with what staff's thinking. At least you're gonna get the input of where it should be heading, and be able to look at both sides and say, listen, this is from the enforcement building side.
Yep.
This is from our side of our perception on where it should be heading. And you must know it by heart by now, Tony, I would think.
Yep.
And at least progress that far.
Right.
And continue with your facade and what's available in grants. What we found in the past is, as we promoted it, and probably as Tony quoted, not well, and we didn't get any takers, so I'm a little hesitant to think that, why are they gonna jump out now if they didn't take advantage of them ever since we've been doing that project? So, go ahead.
I think with the enforcement is critical.
It has to.
Because without that, there's no incentive.
You have no recourse.
And there's laws on the books now that they try to enforce, and it would put people out of business, some of the businesses, if they went in there and enforced them.
And you're absolutely right.
Because they're dangerous buildings right now. We're just asking people to, get on board and make it right. And if there's funding for it, to me, it's a no-brainer as a business.
That's why I think if I was a business owner and that was and it's a low-interest loans.
You're talking about just the facade
Yeah.
piece of things here?
But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it is, to me, you can borrow money.
0% deferred payment loan,
Yeah,
it's just, it's almost, it's, yeah.
So, I mean, and again, what Tony's saying is it never got promoted. It was a letter sent out here. This is available in your neighborhood.
Right. So I agree 100% through the chair. I think at the same time that we're working on this piece, I think if it's the planner's the right person to start drafting the outreach and
Right.
The counseling portion of this. I don't know if the catalog would be part of that, or if that would be part of the enforce. I just don't know where that fits in.
Right.
But I mean, that's obvious. Everyone does it. We've got to do it. Start cataloging these properties in an official way, so we get attention. But the outreach and the counseling portion of it, I'd like to see continued movement on that, and I'd wholeheartedly get involved and help anyone who wants to do that.
That's your motion. That should be the motion, is to push that forward.
I'm gonna move that we move ahead, instruct the town administrator to move ahead on a town,
We'll have
town blight bylaw.
I second that.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, further discussion. Bob, you want it to be heard? Kirk, I haven't forgot you, I'm gonna give you an honest.
You know, I myself haven't had time to look at the blight bylaw. Today's been a very busy day.
You think?
But I do agree that we need to do something downtown area. But you gotta look at, Selectman Manette just spoke on it. Are we gonna put people out of business? Are we going to affect one certain individual that owns quite a bit of those properties downtown? And that individual doesn't want to go ahead and fix it, and we condemn the building. What's the recourse from the town? What's the town gonna do? Is the town gonna pony up money to fix it for that individual? Are we gonna take it? Are we gonna vacate the building, and now we have a whole bunch of empty buildings downtown? I agree, we have some very bad buildings downtown. Unfortunately, they're owned by one person, most of them. I know Bill and I have had this discussions many a times, you know, what do we do? If we go down and enforce, and we force them out, condemn the building, and now it's the recourse of the town. It's a fine line that you gotta do, because these grants, the CBG grants and stuff, have been available to them in the past, and they've all said no. They didn't wanna get tied down, didn't wanna do anything with it, so they've done nothing. So if they continue to do nothing, and I don't agree that's the course, but the town now has to do something. And the other side of the coin is, I also look at, and I've heard this from a number of people and businesses on Main Street, why should I do something when the town's not doing anything across the street? Meaning the Sugden block. You picked out one, the Cherry Street Fire Station. We went up last year, group of firefighters, we cleaned all around it and everything else. With the process, maybe we could start doing something with the building. We had a study done, it was $200,000 just to repair the first floor. Nothing's been done, town's got no money. It's a town building. Who do we start citing for that? Who do we start going after that? These are some of the questions you gotta ask when you start looking at these blight bylaws and stuff is, are we gonna be putting individuals out? Are we gonna be condemning people? Lisa knows, we were just down on Main Street, one of the buildings one night, and we emptied the building for the weekend.
Right.
And now they have to put somebody up everywhere. And they were able to get back in by making repairs. But I went in there with the fire marshals, with the engineers from the marshal's office, and they all went, there's nothing you can do. Unless they add anything to it or radically change it, there's nothing I can do about it. I just can't go in and enforce laws based on today's building code or fire codes based on a building that was built in the 1800s. It's tough. I know you want to do the blight bylaw. I think it's the right thing to do to try and spruce these things up. But what happens if they balk? And they don't want to do it. We enforce it, we start whacking them, and they go, okay, I don't have the money to fix it. All right, so now we condemn the building. They gotta vacate everybody. Remember, if we condemn it and we vacate it, we have to find housing for them.
That's correct.
Okay, we have to put them up. So, before you do anything, tread lightly until you think all these things out with the blight bylaw or whatever, and how we're gonna do it with enforcing. I know like in Webster, they've been going around doing abandoned buildings. Biggest problem we have is we don't know who owns half of these foreclosed buildings in town. We think it's one bank, no, they've sold it to another bank, to another bank, to another bank, and we can never get a hold of anybody. Multiple times we go out on a complaint, and we can't even find out who owns the building. We have no way of doing it. We pay to board it up, we put a lien on the property, and then hopefully, it gets sold. Then we find out and we get paid back that way. The Board of Health, it was $20,000, Lisa, I think, we put in an account a few years ago for boarding up abandoned properties because of that. We couldn't get a hold of the banks to take care of these properties. It's a lot of work that's going on. My biggest thing is what happens when they balk. We condemn the building, and we go on from there. My 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. motion in a second.
Jim, I'll talk from back here, but town administrator is like, how are you gonna enforce it? I'm all for bylaw, I wanna say a few things. I talked to an individual who's called downtown, he says, I'm not gonna fix nothing up, because I gotta pay more taxes. The person across the street fixed it up, got a nice, beauty parlor there, pay for their own money. That's the people we need, but you can't tell people what to do because they're not gonna do it. And the only other way is, as far as I know, I'm not a, but is eminent domain, that's gonna cost big money, and the town can't afford it. So, like the chief says, like the building, how are we gonna enforce it? You can go down and ask them, and you can have, exchange club, they have no enforcement authority. Now, down on Chestnut Street, you talked about that, there was federal money to people to fix up their houses at low interest rates. If you're gonna do anything, that's the way to do it. The town of Spencer can't be in the mortgage because they give people low interest. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry's gonna be down there. And like the fire chief says, the Southern block, we're subsidizing that, and we're gonna tell people what to do with their property. You should really look at it, and I'm all in favor of fixing up the blight, don't get me wrong. But you take a piece of property, it's a piece of property downtown that with X on it, you should take it for taxes. The town hasn't taken it for taxes. And once the town takes it, what are they gonna do with it? You have to tear it down, but I mean, it just costs money on top of money, and nothing's done. So, it's the town administrator, the enforcement, and I support Mr. Pepe, I support all you people. But you've gotta have enforcement, otherwise they're just gonna turn your nose at it. And I don't wanna, as a taxpayer, subsidize people to fix up their property when they don't wanna do it in the first place. If you go to Worcester, they cleaned up downtown, they cleaned up, they had eminent domain, and they bought the property and resold it. That's gonna cost us big money, you can't afford that, so I don't know what the option is, but.
Well, we're gonna find out.
The intention's good, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I first come to town, the place was busy, like Dr. Hicks said. There was, had places, all the places were used. But now people moved out, as a landlord says, I don't want to tenant him or buy it. They moved out, and nothing's being done. And that's right downtown. And so it just goes on and on. It's a big problem, and the chief's right. But I was gonna say one thing that the police chief hasn't talked about, but if you get these I'm just using drug dealers because that's how the law is. I don't know how it works, but if you're renting, these people sell drugs, they can go in there and force the landlord to either throw them out or we're gonna go after you for violations and this and that cost them money. So that's why I think it's a good idea to look at. It's up to the police chief to talk about, but enforcement, like the town administrator says, it's the key. And we can talk about blight, we can talk about having flowers down, which I always supported, but it's a problem.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, I think incremental change can be okay, and we already have some change happening on Mechanic Street. We've taken possession of 18 Mechanic Street, that building's coming down. 22 Mechanic Street's coming down for a new parking lot. So that's something to be hopeful about and look to be encouraged by. So,
But what I must say on that point is that was the result of outreach. That was a result of reaching out to a landowner. So I would ask that effort, separate from blight and fines and enforcement, be done. We have our targeted list. I think that should still occur.
That should be number one, step number one.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Decision. When we did the Finance Committee outreach on the town process, this was one of the major issues. And clearly, and I appreciate that it's a good idea to try and get people to fix up facades. But the biggest concern that I've heard from people is all those buildings with red X's on them that clearly have been condemned. There should be a very aggressive plan to address every single one of those properties, because that's an issue where the people living in that neighborhood or the people operating a business in the neighborhood are going to visit that business. That impacts them, and that's where you can't afford the cost of doing nothing. And that should be the number one issue, because that is the thing that sends the message that people don't want to invest in an area where they see a bunch of buildings with X's. And there were actually far more than I thought there were in walking the streets, as I've taken the time to do. The second is if your bylaw can target, the second biggest issue is when people see broken windows that have been there for a long time. That's another indication of a blighted area. And there are actually more than you would think. If you stand on the top of the town hall steps here, the building right across the street has broken windows on it that I didn't realize before. And that's something that you can perhaps very easily incentivize people for a building that's occupied, at least fix your windows, because that provides a better visual and provides a visual of wanting to invest in the building and should be fairly inexpensive. Thirdly, the longer a property stays vacant, and this goes into Tony's economic development piece, the bigger the opportunity for eventually that to become a blight property. So whether it's the diner, whether it's the former Cumberland Farms, either sides of the John Pizza, the places on Mechanic Street, the building for sale. Further down Main Street, there's a building across from West Main Street School that used to have a business that's been vacant for a long time, business-wise. We need a very aggressive, targeted approach to try and help these people connect to the resources that Warren mentions, to get them to invest in their properties. And then certainly if it's a historic property, then historic tax credits are a potential, certainly for redevelopment of the fire station, but also several of those properties on Main Street. But it's not just Main Street, it's all those streets heading that way, that are one or two streets over that contain several of these buildings that need to be addressed, and where it really affects the people who have to live in those communities every day. So you've invested to make sure they have a good road. Now they need the investment in those properties. And it's something that needs to be addressed, because this is the heart and soul of our community, the downtown, and investment in this. And we clearly heard every place we went for one of those listening sessions that there was concern about this. So it is a balanced approach in the economic development piece, and making sure that we get tenants into these buildings, or property owners into these buildings that are going to invest in them is critical. And I'm very concerned about that. And also, secondly, please realize that blight is just a downtown issue. It's a Lester Line issue. That old courthouse, that building sitting next to it, and now Fallon Clinic's leaving, and that's not, and how long is that going to be vacant, and is that eventually going to turn into a blight problem? So we're very good on the Big Y end of town, and the one property that was left is going to be taken care of. We need to be as strong on the other end of town, because each end of town and the middle of town, the downtown, is what people visualize Spencer for. So I would urge you to take all that into consideration. And economic development is ultimately the more equally important piece, as well as having it look visually good. But even more important than visually is to make sure it's safe. And certainly you're not offending anyone by very aggressively addressing buildings that are already condemned. And there's far more than there should be in the downtown area.
All good points, Billy, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
So I have a motion, I have a second. Chief, one thing Bill brought up, and I just want clarity, is the red X's doesn't mean the building's condemned, it means it is unoccupied. Am I wrong on that?
The red X's were made part of the building code after the 1999 cold
Safety.
storage fire in Worcester. Basically, it tells us as firefighters that the building's unsafe for us to go inside and fight it. If it's half an X, it means that we can go in, but there's dangers in there that we have to look out for. So basically, if a building was on fire, we would not go in. It would be an exterior attack.
Because
And there are a number of them in town.
Right.
But I have to do that in consultation with the building inspector as well. He's the ultimate authority and it falls on his code.
Okay. Through the chair, is the owners notified that their building is?
Yes, and once again, a lot of them don't care, because they're not doing anything with them. We have one on Chestnut Street that the guy put a lot of money into it, and all it is 4 walls and a roof. He pulled all the floors out.
Right.
Looks beautiful from the outside, but it'd be an absolute disaster if it was on fire. And it's a 4-story building. We have the one at Mechanic in Cherry Street. That's been vacant for a long time. The old Red and Rose was in there.
Lamro Furniture is what it was originally.
You know, they had talked about putting a restaurant in it, and that kind of faded away, and they haven't done anything to it.
Where people park.
You know, we got the old courthouse. The old courthouse has been vacant since they moved to, well, I think they moved
no,
to
they went
North
to the-
Brookfield first.
Right.
And then they moved to East Brookfield. So that, I mean, that was a Ford dealership back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, that's an unsafe building as well. The building next door burnt once, and he started putting some more money into it, his own money, because he didn't have insurance on it, and there it sits. It's another huge building that has just, you know, studded walls inside. We've had one on Grove Street that we worked with through a program that was being rehabbed. Currently, right now, they had a red X on it, one across the street from it as well. But, you know, there are a lot of them out there.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion before we vote?
We beat it to death, I think, Mr.
I
Chairman.
think so. All those in favor?
Aye.
Marching orders, Mr. Administrator. Where are we?
Liaison reports.
Liaison reports. Anybody have anything?
I'd like to mention that we have the townwide yard sale. There are posters upstairs and applications, if anybody would like to get involved in it. And also, we're looking for advertisers for the map. They're gonna be issuing maps the day of the townwide yard sale. We're just looking for, it's $25 for a business card size ad that's going on the back of the map.
What's the date, Warren?
The dates on it are September 22nd at 8 a.m. and it's gonna be at the high school. Everybody's gathering at the high school, so the maps are gonna be received. But we have a deadline coming up that we'd like to get these maps in.
Thank you, Warren.
Registration after October 1st goes up, but it doesn't, I don't see it here where the deadline is.
Was it on there? I thought the one you gave me had one.
I don't see it on there.
Anyways, I wouldn't wait.
No, yeah, don't wait. And if somebody can help us out with an ad, that would be fantastic.
Well, the same day that the townwide yard sale is going on is also the open house for cable access. You can drop canned goods off, and I think they're doing the tables at the high school again this year. are they?
Yeah, and the food drive is there also. And the police usually have their tent set up and EMTs. It's a nice event.
It is a nice event.
Yes.
And it's townwide, that's the nice thing, is that's when you know you're living in the community, so.
In the country, we're in the country.
We're in the country.
Country comes together like that.
And Mr. Chairman, I once again want to thank John Stevens for getting the ball rolling on that a couple of years back.
Yep.
Yeah, he's still very active.
Through the chair, I just want to remind this group that we had, the meeting I was alluding to earlier with the EDC and this board is September 10th.
Right.
And one of the agenda items is the downtown design guideline discussion. I also wouldn't mind if we, you know, had a brief mention of what we talked tonight for that group to take on. You know, complicate the outreach piece of our plan. So we received an email from Paul Ed to give him feedback on, you know, there's a group, Harriman, the consultants who did the downtown design guidelines originally, are getting involved, and they want to know who we should who we should have them interview outside of the regular players for their input into design for downtown and our improvements. Yeah.
I would recommend
Yeah.
you stay on top of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna start throwing stuff at them.
Okay.
through the chair.
Sir?
We also have Dr. Paul, how do you say his last name?
Haughey.
Haughey. The superintendent is having a meet and greet at Knox Trail, I believe it is, on Wednesday, the 15th, at 5:30. So if anybody would like to meet the superintendent, it's open to the public, and everyone's invited, so.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah,
Somebody who has an open door and wants to meet the public.
yes, yeah.
Great.
What a thought concept. Anything else? Citizens input, who we got left? Donnie, you haven't spoke.
I got nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Unless you got questions, I got nothing.
Okay.
I would ask you to, as the chairman of the solar, to tell people what's going on with the transfer station on solar.
I'm gonna actually refer it to the town administrator, because he's been in negotiations, and he's finally got us, I think we're pushing the finish line. A little bit of investment's gotta be done, but.
Right, so through you, Mr. Chairman, so the Department of Environmental Protection has been involved, as you might imagine, pretty closely with the permitting of the future new use for that site. And we were required to do a landfill gas assessment to gauge how well the gases are being are exiting the site. That report showed that the town has a little bit of work to do, some corrective work to change out some of the vents, their shapes, to install some new vents on the cap, and to implement a monitoring system. I've been advising the board of this. We didn't budget. The all told number is about $30,000 to $40,000 to accomplish those tasks. So I'll be bringing to the board a request to adjust the UNF budget by that amount, the current year budget, to accomplish those tasks, to get DEP on board and happy with things. And all the while on a parallel track, the Citizens Energy Project is still making its way through permitting. So we're trying to make sure that our obligations don't hold up the developer. So there's nothing really other than what I just described has changed. So we're still on track.
So that's where we are on that point. And again, by spending $30,000, I think was a rough estimate up to. First year return on that property.
The revenue.
It's operational.
The revenue, the anticipated revenue, what will be realized for revenue will be annually in the order of about $320,000. The first year will, if this gets constructed and becomes activated in January, February, it won't be that much because it's just a half a year.
Portion.
But going forward, it's a substantial revenue source for the town through the pilot and the lease.
Anything else? I'd entertain them. Nothing else?
Board member and staff comments? Mr. Chairman, I would like an item on next week's agenda to request the last 8 years of legal fees, what has been paid by the Spencer East Brookfield Regional School District. It's no secret that Debbie Zablocki, who was the principal of Lake Street School for a number of years, recently won a case, and the award, including her attorney's fees, was nearly $500,000, all right? In my opinion, it never should have gone to trial. In my opinion, the district should have honored the contract that they had with them. That's my opinion, okay? But they're spending, I hear rumors that they spent close to $200,000 on legal fees. When I was a superintendent of schools in Ashburnham and Westminster, I had a $30,000 account that I never went near spending, all right? We're paying the damn bill, as is East Brookfield, all right? And that money, as Superintendent Hawley said at some point, in my opinion, should have gone to help kids get education, not to line the pockets of an attorney. I'm sorry. I know there's been an acidic relationship with the Teachers Association up there. The right attorney, I've seen it done, can come in and turn that around 180 degrees. When I was superintendent, we had an attorney who had a very acidic relationship with the person from the MTA that came in to assist our teachers. And I saw this before I even started working. I came here on my own time before I started to attend collective bargaining meetings. It was so bad once that Vinnie Matalitis, the former superintendent, took his chair, okay, and moved it about 10 feet away from everybody else. Because he was in the middle of a shouting match between the MTA person and the school district's attorney, okay? Unfortunately for the school district attorney, one of her children got very ill and she had to take a leave for a while. That led to another attorney coming in from the same firm. His name was Joe Bartulis. I'll give credit where credit is due. And when the yelling and screaming started, Joe took the man, he said, can we go outside and talk? Took that MTA rep, who I've since become friends with, by the way. I'm probably the only superintendent of schools retired who would, or president who would say that. Took him out in the hall. And when they came back in, all right, the oil was poured on the water. Things were calm, all right? They need, in my opinion, to stop spending this wild money, but I want to know how much they really spent. Because we are the ones paying the bill, doggone it all. And I'd like to see from roughly FY 2011 through 2018, that fiscal year just ended. And I don't need to know details, I want to know the gross amount, all right? Because it's outrageous what's going on up there. I don't know the specifics. Money has been wasted. In my opinion, a new attorney could come in, all right? And the right new attorney could come in, sit down with the Teachers Association, who has a new president, who happens to be a selectman in a neighboring town. He's a great teacher. I know him from watching him teach when I was superintendent. And he also taught one of my grandsons, all right? Tremendous teacher, all right? He's, in my opinion, a reasonable man, all right? Settle the Mickey Mouse grievances that are there, some of which are probably, and I don't know for a fact, could be nuisance grievances, and get to the one or two or three that really need work and roll up their sleeves and get it done. This isn't going to happen, in my opinion, as long as they have the attorney who's been up there with going at it with the Teachers Association. But we need to see the amount of money at least, all right? And maybe I'm overstepping my bounds in terms of saying what I think should happen up there, but doggone it all, I invested over a long period of time, a lot of my time to that school district. 15 years on the school committee, unpaid, just like we get paid up here at the Board of Selectmen. And I spent 8 years chairing the Knox Trail Building Committee and 8 years on the Wire Village School Building Committee. Not even talking when I was superintendent of schools, all right? And I think I have a right, given what I've done for that school district, to speak out and say enough is enough, doggone it all. I'd like to say something else, but there's a lady sitting next to me.
Nice.
Okay? I'd like to see those bills. So that I'd like to see on the agenda, Mr. Chairman. We can request how much they spent and have a discussion about it. And as far as I know, they've kept the attorney they got. My other concern is, are they going to appeal this and spend another five-figure amount of money beating a dead horse? In my opinion, pay the lady what she's entitled to and count your blessings and don't go any further. I can't make that decision, but that's my opinion. But I think the public has a right to know what's been spent up there on legal fees. All right, that money could have been spent to help kids learn. It could have been spent to put more police officers on the street, firefighters on the street. A lot of things that money could have been used for, besides spending it on attorney fees that, in my opinion, were unnecessary. Part of it, I'm sure, was a result of some of their superintendents who called every time they got a question that they weren't sure of the answer of. All right, this man, I think, is not going to be somebody who's going to be calling the attorney every day. That was part of it too, from what I understand.
Well, I'm hoping he doesn't. I think, and Mr. Administrator, you can put that on the
Thank you.
next agenda, and it'll be the will of the board what we should do next, but I can't speak for the school committee. I can say that I'm sure our legal expenses are up this year more than we figured, so.
I think we're gonna approach, we think we're gonna approach what they spent.
So also request the numbers.
Right.
I mean.
Right,
Oh, yeah, I want the
Right.
numbers. Of course, Tony.
Well,
No. All right,
Well, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn.
have a motion.
I will second that motion.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, good night.
Have a good evening.